Beltone Hearing Aid Center presents The Drive.
Ready?
The Drive.
Elmore deep, left side three is good! From 30 feet, John Elmore!
The Drive with Paul Swann.
Welcome into the Wednesday, October 3rd edition. The Drive begins now on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. It is Wednesday, or it's Doc Holliday's Thursday. Take your pick, because that's what's coming up tonight. We've got the Doc Holliday call-in show. That is coming up. That'll be later on this evening. You can tune into that. 7 o'clock right here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. 6 o'clock, it's Inside Herd Athletics with Marshall University Athletic Director Mike Hamrick. So that's all coming up tonight right here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. What I've got for you tonight, we're going to talk Marshall and Middle Tennessee. And Chip Walters joining us from Middle Tennessee's radio crew. He's going to tell us everything we need to know and then some about MTSU, and that's coming up later on in the program. And, of course, we'll get some of your phone calls in, 877-420-TALK, 877-420-8255. Now, Twitter is where I'm going to go for some of the show conversation today. You can find me online at Paul Swann, and really, there have been a few voices. I'm not sure if it's a overwhelming amount of voices, but there are a few voices, pro and con, for high school playing on a Friday when Marshall's playing. And then, of course, you've got those who maybe don't like Marshall playing on Friday. First of all, television dictates it. Television dictates this. Mike Hamrick didn't sit there and go, you know what, I think I want to play on Friday night. If he had his way, he'd probably play on Saturday, but television dictates. Now, of course, I can't answer for him. He can answer for himself, and he can answer that question tonight coming up following this show. And you can join him with your host, Mike Kurtner, as they will answer questions like this. But that was a thread that started up on Twitter for me last night. I've just been following a little bit of the conversation, so I'm going to throw it out to you. Should Marshall not play on Friday, if all possible? Just say, no, we're not going to play on Friday. Now, this would be home games only. Or should high school games be moved? So should local teams like Huntington, Spring Valley, Cabell Midland, I don't know, Hurricane, how far do we go with this? Should high school teams say, you know what? The Herd's playing on Friday night. Let us move from our traditional Friday night and just move out of the way here and let the Herd have that night. We'll play on Saturday. I don't think that's going to happen in any world that we live in anytime soon. Not too many high schools are going to move to accommodate the university. I don't know of too many that are going to do that. But why do you feel that high schools should adjust their schedule? Why should high schools accommodate Marshall? Why should Marshall accommodate the high schools? Why should that happen? You tell me. Set up the argument. Save it for later on, because we're going to talk to Chip here in a few minutes, so I don't want you to call in early on that and stew on the line for a while. Save that for later, but come up with some good reasons to defend your position. Why you think either high schools should accommodate Marshall or Marshall should accommodate the high schools. Marshall knows better, right? They're playing on Friday. They know that's high school football night. People in Chesapeake don't care. People in Ironton don't care. Rock Hill don't care. Ashland don't care. Boyd County don't care. Greenup County don't care. I'm sure Hurricane don't care. Kanawha Valley definitely don't care. So why is this an argument? I'm kind of curious. Why is this an argument? Because you're not going to see too many teams make the move, the accommodation. It's not going to happen, right? I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. So there is your goal for this evening. Come up with a good reason why either one should accommodate the other. I don't know if this is really an issue, because if I'm a Herd fan and I'm interested in going to the Marshall game, I'm going on a Friday night, unless there's a compelling reason for me to go to the high school game. What would that compelling reason be? One, you've got a kid that plays on the team. Okay, reason one, you have a child who's playing high school football on a Friday night. So you're going. Okay, there's that. All right, give me reason number two. Well, you're a supporter, you're a booster. I don't know, you're a parent, teacher, you're involved with the school somehow. Either you're involved with the school, you've got a kid on the team, you're going to that game. Or three, you know what? I'm not a Marshall fan, so I don't care. That might be your reason right there. So you've got some options here. But I just thought this was an interesting conversation to think that, okay, the high schools, they're going to try to accommodate Marshall, or Marshall try to accommodate the high schools, when honestly, television is going to dictate when Marshall plays. And then the high schools could play on Saturday. Is that going to increase the gate? How much more of a gate are you going to get? If we're talking about you wanting to watch both, well, you're going to have to make a choice. If it's about the high schools losing gate, I don't know how much gate the high schools are going to lose, because there will be a crowd of people who support high schools. I'm pretty much betting that the gate's not going to be impacted that much. High school football is going to be fine. Marshall's going to be fine. Of course, I don't think we're going to see a sellout at Jones C. Edwards Stadium. But there'll be a lot of people who will get there late, come after work. There'll be a lot of people who will be tailgating when the lots open. They'll be on lots tailgating sooner. They'll be getting their tailgate on. The tailgating will happen. That's not something to worry about. So we've got all that to talk about, and, of course, we'll take your phone calls coming up later on this hour, 877-420-TALK, 877-420-8255. But when we come back from break, we're going to talk Marshall and Middle Tennessee. We've got Chip Walters joining us on the program. Chip's going to tell us everything we need to know about Marshall and Middle Tennessee State, and later on your phone calls. And don't forget, it's a really busy night tonight for you as a Herd fan, because we've got the Doc Holliday call-in show. We've got Inside Herd Athletics with Marshall University Athletic Director Mike Hamrick. It's all coming up right here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Welcome back to the Wednesday, October 3rd edition. Your drive continues on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. Let's turn our attention back to Marshall and MTSU. And to help us break down the game on Saturday, Chip Walters joins us, voice of MTSU. And Chip, this is going to be a more exciting game than maybe a lot of fans thought it would be initially. MTSU beats FAU all of a sudden. If Middle wasn't on people's radar, they are now.
Yeah, and that's true, and it's made this a really important game in the big scheme of things. I know neither Doc or Stock will give it much more than just being the next one, but whoever comes out of this one is in a really good position. As far as the league race is concerned, they would have, if Middle could be fortunate enough to win, they would have tiebreakers over FAU and Marshall. If Marshall wins, they'd have a tiebreaker over Middle Tennessee with still FAU to come and already have a road win at Western. So it's a big game on a big stage Friday night, playing in Huntington. So, and Middle's going to try to do something it's never done, and that's win a game in Huntington.
Chip Walters joins us on the program. So we're playing on Friday night. I don't know how I feel about this still to this day, but that kind of makes this one a little harder at the same time. It's a quick turnaround. You play on Saturday and then right back at it. You got to be in Huntington sooner than later. And how are your kids taking this? I know some of the Marshall players are actually excited the fact that short turnaround, they get to play again right on Friday.
Well, first of all, to talk about, I don't like playing on Friday night. And Coach Stock went on record, he doesn't like playing on Friday night. That should be for the high schools. And, Thursday night's fine, Saturday's fine, but leave Friday night kind of sacred. But you play when the league tells you to play, and television dictates that. And I think there are 3 or 4 games total on Friday night. But, it was today I was doing some of my pre-game work and talking to Tony Franklin and asked both he and Scott Schaefer about, the one less day to prepare. And Scott, talked about really all they did was move their normal off day from Monday to Saturday of this week. So they just kind of went right back into the grind of a normal game week. And for Franklin, he goes, I'd be fine if we played, Thursday. He goes, the sooner we can get back out and play again. He goes, I'm like a baseball guy. I want to come out and, if you didn't do well the previous weekend, you don't have to wait all week to do it. But, I think, Friday night games have earned their spot, I guess. And, the one thing that I think for players is that they know that basically half of all the college football teams in the country are in a hotel somewhere, or actually more than that, because, teams now stay in hotels for home games, which I've never understood. But but what are they doing? They're sitting around watching the Friday night games, and so they all want to put on a good show for their peers at other schools around the country. So there's I guess where one of the things that it has going for it.
Chip, help me break this team down a little bit, because really the best team to gauge Middle right now is that Florida Atlantic win, because you look at the Georgia game, and Georgia's going to do that to almost everybody, so that's not a fair gauge there. And Vanderbilt's a pretty good football team, and, of course, UT Martin was really no contest for Middle. So is this Florida Atlantic win, is this the game that's most indicative of what Middle Tennessee football is about this year?
Well, I agree 100% with you that was, I'm not sure that we still truly know who we are. I think we have a much better idea going into Friday night. But I think, can I tell you that 100%? No, not yet. But I think, and we talked about it all last week, whether it was on Stock's radio show our pregame show, whatever it might be, that it was going to be probably the first real true test to give us an idea. And I think it did. I still think Florida Atlantic is a heck of a football team, and still a little confused why they didn't try to, take a couple of more deep shots to loosen things up, because Middle's defense really got good in the second half, and Florida Atlantic had the ball 3 times on the plus side of the 50, twice inside the red zone, and only scored 3 points in the second half. And Middle did a really, really good job of getting off the field. But I don't think Florida Atlantic really helped themselves at times. But Singletary had his big night. He had 118 yards. But the key was it took him 34 carries to get that, and kept his per carry average under 3, which he's normally about 4.5 or 5. So Brent Stockstill got a couple things to go his way. He struggled a little bit. We got healthy a little bit. Had 2 safeties. We've been playing in the secondary with nickel, playing the 4, 5, and 6 guys at safety. Well, last week we got to play the 1, 2, and 3 guys at safety, and that made a big difference. And so the open week came at a great time. A lot of bumps and bruises. Got some guys back, and it looks like going into Marshall we're going to have most everybody, pretty much what we had last week.
Well, for Marshall fans, it's actually a rare treat because Brent Stockstill feels like he's been at Middle for, 15, 20 years, and the herd rarely gets to see him. So this is sort of a treat because I think Brent still has that capability of being the best quarterback right now in Conference USA. It's just injuries have really prevented him from making a solid go at it. So
yeah, this is going to be his first time to play in Huntington. He's been there the last 2 times. So, but this will be his only chance to play a game. He was injured, and John Urzua played 2 years ago, and Middle was really playing offense with 1.5 hands tied behind their back. And so, yeah, he's excited to play. Our guys are excited to come to Huntington. They know the atmosphere is going to be great, and know they're going to be playing a very well coached, very talented Marshall football team. So that's what has them excited the most is to be able to come up and play and feel like they come into the game with. I think 2 years ago we came up there knowing that we really were between a rock and a hard place because of injuries. This time we come in a little bit healthier. So look forward to watching both these teams compete Friday night.
Chip, I think it's fair to say that maybe Middle gets a lot of attention for offense and Stockstill drives a lot of that. But talking to some of the players this week leading up to this one, the feeling is maybe the defense is the underrated component of this team. Is that fair?
I agree 100% with you on that. I think Scott Schaefer's arrival before last season, we went from 96 to 35th in the country in total defense last year. And this year, obviously with the schedule that we played, they've given up some yards and some points to Georgia in particular. But they're right now, Middle is like the 8th least penalized team in the country. So they're playing with a lot of discipline, and his way of doing things and being able to, they just spent a lot of time when he first got here getting lined up right. And now, you had 8 guys return from a year ago and including, the bowl MVP, Darius Harris, who got moved to middle linebacker. He's calling the defense now out there. So I agree. I really like watching this defense play, and they've taken on his personality. They do a good job of disguising some things time to time, and Scott is really good at calling to bring pressure at the right time. So it's going to take all of that and a whole lot more to be successful Friday night.
Chip Walters is joining us, voice of the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. And with that defense, are they salivating at the opportunity to go after a still rookie-type quarterback. You've got Isaiah Green, who's been pretty admirable back there, but it seems that teams are keying in on him a lot more, trying to rattle the kid, the redshirt freshman. Is that Middle's MO for this one, you think, on Friday?
I don't know. It'll be. I don't know what their as far as how much pressure they want to put on him, or if they're going to go more of trying to disguise things downfield to, and that's what everybody does. I mean, it's not just Middle's defense against Isaiah, but, I promise you Marshall's going to try to do some things to get in Brent Stockstill's head, and more than likely they probably will come after him from a physicality standpoint. But I think they would, if they didn't try to, bring some pressure for it on the correct times, and also try to confuse him with some coverages, give a man look and play zone or vice versa, they wouldn't be doing their jobs.
Speaking of man or zone, I know one thing. If you talk about Marshall football, you have to talk about Tyree Brady, and he seemed to smile every time we would talk about defense, and if the word man came up, he's looking forward to the opportunity of going one-on-one with somebody. What do you think the answer is going to be for Middle Tennessee to stop him, or at least try to slow him down?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I can't tell you what Scott Schaefer's going to do, but you've got to. I think you have to put more than one guy. You have to marshal some resources toward him, or try to maybe play some zone, or it may force you to go nickel a little bit more than you might be comfortable with. And because when they target him as much as they do, I don't know, how do you play the odds and try to double team him as much? But when you do, obviously you're leaving yourself vulnerable somewhere else. That's why Scott Schaefer, gets paid the big money, is to come up with that plan. It's above my pay grade, I promise.
Chip Walters joining us on the program. Yeah, I don't want to try to stop Tyree either. I would need
Hey, now how about us? How about this? Last week we played probably the best back in the league, and this week we get probably the best receiver in the league.
I still I don't like our chances. If it's you and me out there, like the entire radio crew from both teams and the media corps, I don't like our chances at all covering that guy.
Well, Steve Cotton is quick in a small area. So.
Fair enough. Chip Walters joining us on the program. You talk about going up against the best running attack possibly. Marshall's not been very good, or at least they've been underwhelming at the run game, a little bit more than usual. Looking at this Middle defense, is that going to be a situation where you think Middle's maybe going to be able just to say, all right, we're going to cover you, you're not going to throw on us, and we're going to dare you to run? How you think this Middle defense is going to respond, knowing that maybe the running attack's not as good as years past for Marshall?
I don't know. I mean, you've got several different ways you could go about it. You could say, okay, Marshall has been able to run the ball in the past. This year, maybe not so good, but at least if we can take that away and force the throw, and when we force the throw, try to rattle the young quarterback, maybe that could be a route to go. Or you say, okay, well, their running game has not been what it normally has been. Maybe we can rush three and, put more people in the secondary and force the run and be able to cover it with 3 or 4. Again, I don't know which way they're going to go, but I think I think there are options there. And to be real honest, I don't think it's going to be one or the other. I think, both squads are going to try to mix things up some, and down, distance, game situation, all that's going to dictate a lot of it.
Chip Walters is joining us, and I would be remiss, Chip, if we didn't talk basketball again. Of course, Conference USA has changed a few things around this year. Scheduling is going to be a little more interesting because of the pod system that they've come up with to try to help the upper teams with possibly trying to get 2 teams into the NCAA tournament. Though, what was your impression of the new scheduling method when it came out?
Number one is that first impression was, hey, they're doing something. And there's been a lot of finger pointing by fans and stuff in the past that they weren't doing anything to try to make some hay in that area. And Mark Adams, I mean, if Mark Adams is as big a mid-major basketball proponent as there is in the country, and if he's coming to the table, obviously he's put a lot of thought to it. The league, brought him in to work on this. I think it's going to be interesting in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We could sit here in Murfreesboro and say, oh well, that's going to protect us at the end of the year. This year we're going to be fighting to be in that top 4, because obviously when you lose some talented players like we lost, and things always players leave and players come in with a new coaching staff. We've got a brutal non-conference schedule. We did get a couple of guys eligible from a medical standpoint last week, and so Coach McDevitt knows what's ahead. He's one of the most calm guys I've ever been around, and so I think this team, don't judge them in November, but I think they will be pretty good by the time we get to February. As good as last year, not quite yet, but there are some troops on the way.
I still think it's crazy that Middle and Western Kentucky are going to play once. Depending on how this pod works, you might get a second chance at them, and you might get that third chance at them. Whereas Marshall and Western Kentucky, if things fall into place, Marshall might see them 4 times. So I think that's just crazy since I love the 100 Miles of Hate. It's my favorite rivalry name.
Well, it's and I don't use that name very much, but there's some strong feelings there, and in my opinion, it's the best rivalry in the conference. You could play tiddlywinks and sell the place out when Middle and Western play, but it's that is the downside, is that Middle and Western could only play once. But again, it's kind of one of those things where you have to give up something for the good of the league, and I do think we that situation last year. It was obviously there what they were trying to protect from. You didn't want Middle, who had an RPI in the 40s, to lose to an FIU who was in 316 or whatever, but it didn't bite us in the regular season, but it sure bit us in the tournament, and obviously made a difference in where we ended up.
Chip Walter's our guest, voice of Middle Tennessee State University. Looking forward to it on Friday, and hopefully we'll get this thing back to a Saturday schedule so we can have normal football again.
There you go.
Chip, thanks, sir. Appreciate your time. We'll do it again soon.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
That's Chip Walters. Looking forward to having him in Huntington on Friday. We're going to take our next break, come back. We'll get some of your phone calls in. 877-420-TALK, 877-420-8255. We've got more on the way. This is The Drive, presented by Beltone Hearing Aid Center on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Now, back to The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Welcome back to the Wednesday edition. I'm your host, Paul Swann. This is The Drive presented by Belltone Hearing Aid Center on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. You know what tonight is? Start of the National Hockey League season. That's right. I know baseball is getting really heated up, and last night at 1:30 a.m. when I finally got to sleep after watching that game and listening to that game, I thought to myself, that's okay, because tomorrow, which was at that point this morning, I'm going to be watching hockey. So I'm looking forward to that. I got hockey tonight. Of course, we got football still with the Doc Holliday show coming up. And that's going to be at 7 o'clock. Inside Herd Athletics is coming up tonight. 6 o'clock with the athletic director, Marshall University Athletics, Mike Hamrick. And let me preface this by saying this is the only real opportunity for you just to get that question out. You want to ask Mike something, you've got a super opportunity here to call and ask him a question. Now, I can tell you up front, we're not sitting back picking and choosing the calls based on something we don't want. This is an opportunity for you to call and ask the athletic director questions. Now, I'm going to ask you to ask some good questions, ask some serious stuff, some legitimate stuff. If you've got concerns, things like that, yeah, here's an opportunity here. But you can ask him about, hey, why play games on Friday? You want to ask him that question? You could possibly throw that out there to him and get the answer. It might not be the answer you want, but you would get the answer. So, again, that's the opportunity you got right before you, and that's coming up in about 15 minutes, and you can listen to it right here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. So, where do you fall on high school football versus college on Friday? Now, the discussion that's going on right now, and you can follow me on Twitter at Paul Swann, is one, you had one gentleman ask, or really say that he wished that local sports would cater their schedules around Marshall football. He said, it's a shame that Spring Valley and Huntington have home games on Friday night. And he added, he realizes that that could be a tall order, but he's driven by the Ona Little League fields off of 64 on game days, and they have games going on. Why can't they play the games in the morning so families could attend the Marshall football game that afternoon or evening? And the discussion is going on now. I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but I don't know if we've got a situation where high schools and colleges should work around each other. Because if that's the case, then how are you going to schedule basketball games? Because let's not just look at football. It's basketball and it's other sports as well. Marshall's got a lot of sports going on at the university. And they've got basketball games that could coincide with high school games. Let's use that, take it a little bit further. So Conference USA is going to set the schedule. It's not Marshall University. It's not Mike Hamrick sitting, high atop this tower, just looking down on you, saying, you know what, we're going to play. You deal with it. The conference comes up with a schedule. The television partners then come in and say, we want this game. Okay, we want this to be a Friday night. And okay, we're going to do a Friday night national television broadcast of this game. And Marshall can't control half of it because if they're on the road and it's a Friday game, well, so be it. Of course, that's not going to affect the teams locally at that point. But a home game Friday night, televised nationally, you've got what the schedule is. And so if a high school team feels that, you know what, we can't compete with this, we're going to have to move our game to a Saturday to accommodate Marshall, that's their choice. If they feel like, our gate's going to be better. If we have a game, our gate's going to be better. Let's just go ahead and move it. But I don't know if the gate's going to be any better. It's a school-by-school basis. And then you've got a situation again where, all right, basketball, Huntington High, Spring Valley, Cabell Midland, and I'm going with those teams because they're the ones that are the closest to Marshall. So now Conference USA comes out with their schedule. Marshall works on the non-conference side, and then Conference USA comes out with their schedule. And look, it conflicts with some basketball games. I mean, what are the high schools going to do? Change that? It's almost similar to the situation where, okay, Marshall all of a sudden is short a game because of the hurricane. And now what does Marshall do? Keep the open date or try to schedule some other schools? And, of course, you're not going to be able to schedule that many schools because there are not that many schools open. And then, again, there's so many logistical items you've got to put into place to make some of this stuff work. I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, there's Marshall football on Friday. And I know if you want to go see the Highlanders or the Timberwolves, the Knights, the Fighting Tigers, the Panthers, anybody that you follow, you want to go see that game and the Marshall game, well, you've got to choose. I would tell you, if you go to the high school game, take your radio along, listen to the voice of the herd, Steve Cotton. You get a little bit of both. You get your game that you're going to, and you get the Marshall game. And, of course, for many high schools, you can tune into their games on the radio as well. So if you're going to the Marshall game, you want to catch up on Huntington High, take your radio. Keep Huntington High in. Or Spring Valley, Cabell Midland. You know what I'm saying? So I know it's a really tough situation because, again, we're talking about some who would like to go to both. And I get that completely. Sure, want to go see a high school game on a Friday night? Then I'm going to go see the Marshall game on Saturday. Kick back on Sunday. I'm going to watch a little NFL action. Oh, that's not going to be the schedule this week. The schedule this week is herd on Friday. Saturday, you can watch whatever college game you want. Sunday, Bengals football. Note I said Bengals football, not Browns football, because I just wanted to get a reaction from our producer, Gabriel Sellards. How's it feel? The Browns are terrible right now. How's it feel? They're terrible in the sense that they're good enough to be good, but they're terrible because they can't get the win. How's it feel?
Well, up until the previous game, their whole season was tied with the Bengals. They both had their 5 wins. They were both tied. And Bengals almost lost to a very, very bad team at Atlanta.
The Bengals are 3-1. The Browns,
counting preseason.
Preseason doesn't matter.
There's a football game being played this year.
I'm teaching you. Preseason does not matter. Preseason matters not. It might make you feel better, but it matters not. I'm actually impressed. He's actually paying attention to a little football talk. I'm actually impressed with that, Gabriel. Quick timeout. We're going to come back and wrap this up. This is The Drive, presented by Beltone Hearing Aid Center, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Hi, I'm Josh Childers from
Paul Swann has the wheel on The Drive, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of The Drive on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. We are presented by Beltone Hearing Aid Center. Coming up tonight, it is the Duck Holiday Call-In Show. You can catch that 7 o'clock right here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. And, of course, we have got baseball. That's right, baseball action following the show tonight, following the Duck Holiday Call-In Show. We have got baseball action, and you can tune in right after. Everything's done. 8 o'clock, won't miss anything, and you can follow along, find out what the baseball playoffs are going to look like tomorrow by catching the game tonight between the Athletics and the Yankees, and we'll have that for you. You can start on Cat Sports 93.3 and 1340, our sister station, at 7:30. And, of course, stick around for Doc Holliday Show, 8 o'clock. We'll get you right to the game broadcast, and you can tune in there. Again, it's the Athletics and the Yankees coming up tonight, following the Doc Holliday Call-In Show right here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I'm going to have a hard time tonight. I'm going to try to listen to that. I've got hockey to watch tonight, and then I've got not one, not two, but 3 hockey fantasy leagues. I don't know what I was doing. I started a league, fun. I know the people here, and then today I thought, you know what? I want to jump in a public league on ESPN's fantasy site. I want to see what that's like. So I jumped in, did the auto draft, and set up my preferences there. And I'm like, I don't enjoy the setup here for ESPN. So I jumped back on Yahoo, actually did a hockey draft there, did pretty good on my draft, and I'm set for hockey action tonight. It works for me. I didn't do fantasy football, so I'm making up for it by doing fantasy hockey. I got an invite for somebody else in my league too. I should have joined theirs. Hey, you've got a hockey fantasy league you want to start up? I'll probably join it as well. Sure, 5, 6, 7, 8 hockey leagues. I can handle it, right? That's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate everyone. Stick around. We've got more on the way. It is Inside Herd Athletics. Your host, Mike Kurtner, will have the athletic director of Marshall University, Mike Hamrick. It's going to be great to hear from him again. So that's coming up tonight, followed by the Doc Holiday Show. Until then, good night.
WRBC Huntington, W227BS Huntington, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. Huntington Sports Station.